We're live. 1 second. Okay, so today I decided to go live. I haven't been on here in a while. I've been super busy, but I want to make time for what it is that I'm passionate about. And today, as you can see, the video title is What is Addiction? Because I talk about gambling addiction on here all the time, but I think it's important for people to understand that gambling is an addiction, which is like a mental illness. An addiction can be to anything. And so I want to break down. I'm going to have this article at hand that's going to help me to break down what addiction is. And then I'm going to kind of like add some tidbits. But this article is coming from the Medical News Today. Okay. So yeah, this is all about addiction, and it's gonna break down and let you know that addiction is just not about gambling. Addiction is it's not just behavioral, it's substance abuse. So it affects people in all aspects of life. You know, you can be practically addicted to anything, and what makes it a disorder, an addiction, is that it's interfering with your everyday life. It's bringing you down. You're not happy about it. It's controlling you. You're not controlling it. Anytime you're out of control, that's a problem. So let's jump right in, guys. So without further ado, what is addiction? It says here, addiction is an inability to stop using a substance or engaging in a behavior, even though it may cause psychological or physical harm. Now, we know that with gambling, if you are afflicted with the gambling addiction issue or disorder, you know that gambling affects how you feel psychologically. It can cause you to feel anxious. It can cause you to feel sad. It can cause you to feel depressed. It has driven people to end their life. That's how bad it's been. I'm going to spend too much time on that today, but it can cause you to be angry, you know, in a rage, you know. It can cause you to do things that could land you up in jail. It could do things to where you may harm yourself. So it's having psychological effects upon you, this behavior. So, you know, we talk about psychological harm and physical harm. I'm trying to think of a way that gambling can cause physical harm. The only way I can see gambling causing physical harm is if, like, maybe you don't have enough money to eat or something like that, or maybe you get into a fight or an altercation with somebody, you know, that type of thing. But gambling does more psychological harm than anything, working on the emotions and the your mental abilities. So anyway, it says here, the term does not only refer to dependence on substance, such as heroin or cocaine. Some addictions also involve an inability to stop partaking in activities, such as gambling, eating, or working. So a person can essentially be addicted to working, they can be addicted to eating, and as we know, they can be addicted to gambling. Okay? An addiction is a chronic condition that can also result from taking medications, misuse of medications. And it says here, the American Society of Addiction Medicine defines addiction as a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, environmental, and an individual's life experience. People with an addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. Does this sound familiar? If anybody can relate to this, and it doesn't even have to be gambling, it can be any form of addiction, because this paragraph said a lot. And so I'm going to unpack this a little bit and take every little bit piece by piece and break it down and relate it back to gambling. It says here, the American Society of Addiction Medicine defines addiction as a treatable. So we know that gambling can be treated. Whether or not you are successful with that treatment, that's another thing. That's on you, you know, whether or not you follow through. But it says it's a chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits. So now let's talk about the brain. We know that the brain releases dopamine in response to stimuli or a behavior. Stimuli is anything outside of you that can cause you to have a change, have a physiological change within your body. Okay, so stimuli can be just observing something. You can see something, you can smell something, you can hear something. You have a psychological response to that because you have this stimuli, and then your brain has to interpret it. Depending on what that stimuli is, it can cause your body to release certain chemicals. Hence, in gambling, when you're participating in the behavior of gambling, you release dopamine. And in gambling, you release a large amount of dopamine, and that dopamine takes you to a very euphoric state. It's very pleasurable, okay? So that's the complex brain activity that's happening that can cause addiction. Remember, it says addiction is defined as a chronic medical disease that involves complex interactions with brain circuits. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about gambling. And it also involves genetics. So gambling can be genetically passed down. So let's say you have a parent that had an issue with gambling. It's a great possibility that may have been passed on to you. Or it doesn't even have to be a parent. It could just be in the family line. It could be your grandmother. It could be your grandfather. You know, it's interesting because I know for a fact that basically everybody in my family gambled. My grandfather was a dealer and a gambler. He would deal poker at the games, and then he would also, so he was all around that. And I know my grandmother, she gambled. You know, my great grandfather, he gambled. You know, so it's starting to really make sense just reading this. I'm like, wow. So, you know, if you are suffering from gambling addiction, you might want to look back in your family line, you know, and see, is there anybody that, you know, was fooling around with us? So anyway, well, let's move right along. Your environment, just being in an environment where let's say you're just hanging out at the casino. That's a gambling environment. At some point, you might decide to partake in that. Or if people around you are participating in gambling, that might motivate you to want to gamble just out of curiosity. Or if you're around people that gamble compulsively and you just gamble regularly, the more that you spend time around these people, the more that, you know, likelihood that you may possibly develop a gambling addiction. It's not guaranteed, but it's definitely possible. Let's see, an individual's life experience. Okay, we talked about that. So people with an addiction, they use substances or they engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. So we know, we heard the stories. If you look at the stories on my YouTube profile, YouTube page, you will see that there are a lot of people. There's a guy that just keep walking back and forth, and I don't know what he's doing. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm a little distracted. But anyway, let me get back to what I'm doing here. So one of the hallmarks of gambling addiction is you want to stop. You're tired of it. You don't like the effects that gambling is having on your life, but yet you continue to do it. That right there is a sheer indication that you have an addiction. You want to stop. You're tired of losing your money. You're tired of losing your check. You're tired of losing your savings. You're tired of losing your 401k. You don't want to do it anymore, but you keep doing it. You keep putting it. You keep making sports bets. You keep getting on your phone and getting on the online casino and playing the slots. You keep playing poker. You keep playing blackjack. You keep playing the slots. You don't want to do it. That is letting you know that it's time to stop. Hello. I'm not sure how to pronounce this name here, but welcome to the channel. All right. So getting back to this whole thing is you realize this addiction. Hey, how you guys doing? You have this addiction and you realize it. That's why I'm educating you, so you can say, hey, okay, I have this addiction. Now you can take the first step. I need to get some help. I need to go to Gamblers Anonymous. I'm doing pretty good. Are you a gambler? Just out of curiosity? Or are you just on here just trying to have some fun? All right, let me get back into this. So, part of your gambling recovery is understanding the nature of this, the seriousness of it, and understanding you do have an issue and that you can get the help that you need. You can get the treatment. You understand it's a psychological issue that has worked on your brain, it's got a stronghold on you, and now it's time to get rid of it. Because the thing about it is, if you never realize that there's an issue or there's a problem, then guess what? You'll look back 10 years from now and you don't have any money, you know, and you're like, what happened to my life? What did I do? It says, somebody says, okay, bye-bye. Love your kids. Okay. Okay, guys. So, you know, let me get back to this. It says people with addiction and substances engage in behaviors that become harmful despite the consequences. Okay, so many people, but not all, start using drugs or they engage in an activity voluntarily. Most people that have a gambling addiction, they do it because, oh, let's go out to the casino, let's have some fun, let's have a girls' night out, let's have a boys' night out. Most people start gambling just because it's casual. Let's find something to do. They go hang out. You're going out for drinks, you're playing a slot, and it's all for fun, right? So, however, when the addiction takes over, it reduces self-control. Addiction can take over and it reduces self-control. So one of the hallmarks of gambling addiction is that you no longer have control, meaning that what you want to do, you don't do. If you want to stop, you're not able to stop because it has taken control. Okay, this physiological thing going on in your brain it's taking control to where now you're not in the driver's seat. Somebody else is driving you. You're pulling out more and more money from the ATM, okay? And you know that you need that money for something else. You know that you're trying to save your money. You know that you have to pay your bills, but yet you have lost self-control. Losing self-control means that you're not doing what you're normally supposed to be doing because you got something else interfering. Okay, that's one of the hallmarks of a gambling addiction. I'm gonna take a sip of water, excuse me. Okay, welcome guys, welcome. Like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I'm just breaking down what addiction is in general and how it relates to gambling, because I think it's important for people to truly understand that gambling is an addiction disorder. It's a mental disorder. You don't start off with a gambling addiction when you go play and have fun and play slots or whatever you play. But what happens is the more that you participate in this activity, it begins to work on you psychologically. Okay. And that's why you're not able to stop. That's why things get out of control. You don't start off addicted to gambling. You start off having fun, having a good time. But the more that you do it, you begin to slowly lose control because there's some complex things going on in your brain. You got some chemicals releasing in your brain that feel really good. You get hooked on it and you're like, oh, when I gamble, I feel good. This feels so good to win this money. And next thing you know, you're hooked. So I'm going to get back to this. So addiction versus misuse, okay? And then they have here, they're talking about drugs. So drug addiction and drugs misuses are different, right? So, but we're talking about gambling here, but addiction is addiction. It doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. So it says misuse refers to the misuse of a substance at a high dose or an inappropriate behavior. Right? It says participating in a behavior in inappropriate situations that could lead to health and social problems. So when we relate this to gambling can cause you to take money that you're not supposed to be taking. There have been stories that I've watched where people have actually went into their kids' piggy bank and took money out of the kids' big piggy bank just to be able to do whatever it is that they were doing. Now we know that's inappropriate. Okay, and that's what gambling has led them into the misuse of that. That's the misuse of gambling. When you're taking money from somebody, or you're lying to people to get money, or whatever, stealing, whatever it is that, a person would do, or just taking money from yourself, taking money that that you need to put towards bills, taking money that you need for groceries, or your savings. Maybe you're supposed to be saving for a house. Maybe you're supposed to be saving for your retirement. I've heard stories where people have a shared account with their husband or wife, and they would take the money, all of the money, empty out the retirement account or bank account on gambling. That's inappropriate. Okay, so that ties into addiction. Misuse of the behavior, misuse of gambling. Gambling should be a fun entertainment thing, but it's turned into some wild circus of losing money. Okay, so however, not everybody who misuses a substance has an addiction. So that's interesting to say, because just because somebody takes some money that they weren't supposed to take and gamble doesn't mean that they have an addiction. Maybe you did take some money that was supposed to go towards a bill and you gambled with it, but you got money coming in and you're like, okay, that was the first time I did that. Okay, good. If that's the first time you did it, that's the first time you did it. But if it becomes a pattern, then you got a problem. Okay, so however, addiction, this does not qualify as addiction. The person experiences chronic relapse and disorder characterized by compulsive drug seeking, continued and despite harmful consequence in long term. So basically what they're saying is, when you begin to establish a pattern of doing things that's creating harm and discomfort in your life, that's when you know that your gambling habit has become a full-blown addiction. And there's a difference between gambling for fun, gambling out of habit, and then just full-blown gambling addiction. There's levels to this. Extreme levels to this. Welcome everybody. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, dislike, whatever. I welcome all comments, good, bad. Give me your feedback. So it says there is substance addiction and non-substance addiction. Some examples of non-substance addiction include gambling, food addiction, internet addiction, gaming addiction, cell phone addiction, and sex addiction. Now that's deep. So these are all the things that are not drug related. You hear about addiction, you're always hearing about drugs. You very rarely you don't really hear about gambling addiction, to be honest, unless you're looking for it on the internet. So here, let's see. Someone with an addiction will continue to misuse the substance or the activity in spite of the harmful effects it has. We talked about that already. So I think that's it for this. Okay, so some of the symptoms of addiction: declining grades or difficulties at school. That's if you're probably like in college. Poor performance at work, probably because you're thinking about gambling the whole time, right? You're working. Relationship difficulties, which often involve lashing out at people who identify the addiction. So let's say, somebody in your family's like, yo, you're gambling way too much, or what are you doing with your money? You're going to lash out at them because you're not proud of it. You're not happy about the addiction. But part of the reaction of having this addiction is that you go into attack mode. You don't want to hear about, nobody wants to admit that this is a problem, but it is what it is. Having a lack of energy in daily activities. With gambling addiction, you don't really care to do anything except gamble. I mean, it's that bad. So that's pretty much dead on. Profound changes in appearance, including weight loss and noticeable abandonment of hygiene. Okay, so I'm going to talk about hygiene. I have a story. So there's this story about this guy. He was playing blackjack. He was winning a ton of money. He was winning so much money that he had to go to the bathroom. And they had ropes around him to stop people from coming around him because he's playing blackjack and he winning thousands of dollars, right? He had to go to the bathroom. Instead of getting up from the table, do you know what this man did? He ended up having a bowel movement on himself while he's playing blackjack because he did not want to get up. He was smelling. It was really, really bad. Could you imagine somebody pooping on themselves, sitting at a blackjack table playing because they don't want to get up? That's what this is talking about. Hygiene. Okay? So, appearing defensive when asked about the substance use. I think we talk about that, where somebody's, approaching you about the fact that you're gambling so much, or you're caught up in gambling, and it's just you're not having a positive reaction toward them doing that. Okay, so let's talk about withdrawal from addiction as it relates to gambling. When a person has an addiction and stops taking the substance or engaging in the behavior, they may experience certain symptoms. For those who have become physically dependent on a substance, abrupt discontinuation may result with unpleasant symptoms. Okay, so I don't know that with gambling that I ever experienced. The most I ever experienced was probably like sadness and depression, because I was so used to getting that hit of dopamine that everyday normal activities that I participated in were no longer fun for me. Life was really boring at first. Gambling was it was the apex, and then now I have to go back to regular everyday life. That I didn't know what that meant anymore, because I no longer enjoyed, you no longer enjoy the regular everyday things like hanging out with friends. Usually when you hang out with friends, you're thinking about gambling. You're just not. Gambling takes over everything because that is the source of your dopamine rush, right? So, talk about treatment. So with gambling addiction, the type of treatments that are beneficial mostly are behavioral therapy and counseling, and then ongoing care to reduce the risk of relapse. And when they say ongoing care, they mean like having like a counselor that you can talk to, having a coach, having an accountability partner, having a peer support person, peer support coach, recovery coach. It's important that when you go through gambling treatment and when you decide to start your gambling recovery, you need somebody that is going to hold you accountable. You need somebody that if you decide, man, I want to go out and I want to get on my phone and gamble, and then you need somebody to talk you out of it. To be honest, you really do, at every step, because it doesn't take much for you to go back into that relapse. Okay, so let's see here. I think I'm gonna close with this, guys. I'm gonna do a summary. Addiction is a serious chronic dependence on substance or activity. In our case, we're talking about gambling. The prevalence of addiction costs the U.S. economy hundreds of billions of dollars each year. A person with an addiction is unable to stop using the substance or engaging in the behavior, even though it's harmful, even if it's affecting their everyday life, even if it's affecting their family. They can't stop. When a person is gambling, they can't stop. And they're under gambling addiction, they cannot stop. Misuse is different from addiction. Misuse does not always lead to addiction, while addiction involves the regular misuse of substance or engagements in a harmful behavior. So just because you gamble, or you might have a habit of gambling, or you might like to gamble, doesn't mean that you have a gambling addiction. But if you start to misuse it, meaning that you're taking money that you actually need and you have a pattern of doing that, then you probably have a gambling addiction, and it's time to start getting help. Symptoms of addiction often include declining physical health, irritation, fatigue, inability to stop using the substance or engaging in the behavior. Addiction can also lead to behaviors that strain relationships and inhibit your daily activities. Stopping the substance or behavior often leads to withdrawal symptoms. People should not attempt to suddenly stop engaging in a certain behavior without medical supervision. Because if you stop abruptly gambling, 9 times out of 10, if you don't seek any counseling or any type of recovery, Gamblers Anonymous, having a recovery coach, you're going to end up back doing it again. Okay? It's a gradual process to this. So it says here, addiction treatment can be difficult, but it is often effective. The best form of treatment depends on person to person. Okay? So let me get some question and answers here. I guess I can go through one of these questions. It says, I have a family member with severe addiction, but they refuse to seek help. What is the best way to connect to a relative with the care they need? The best way to help a relative is to establish trust so that they will believe that you have their best interests at heart. That is so important when you're going through addiction. You already don't trust yourself. You need somebody that you can lean on, that you can confide with, that you can talk with. That's why I created this channel, because I know there's not too many people on YouTube talking about this. When I was in the middle of my mess, there was not too many people that I could talk to. So it's important to find people that have succeeded in recovering from the addiction and that can give you hope. That's the most important thing. You need hope. You want hope. And so having a circle, a network of people that can embrace you is important, because you can't do it alone. You cannot get through this alone. See here. All right, guys, I've talked enough. Please like, share, subscribe. If you know somebody that could benefit from this video, please share it. I hope you guys had a wonderful day. And with that, have a good day. Peace.